Yeah, electronic music almost defines Glasgow in terms of
culture.
The youth
culture.
Not just today's youth, but going back right back to the 80s, 90s. It's always been there, and it almost defines the city musically.
I suppose you've still got that kind of industrial part of the city, whereas people have that working during the week, escapism during the weekend.
Most sort of industrial city. We're not famed much for tropical music. It's much more aggressive, more noise influenced, things like this. It's definitely like a punk aesthetic.
There is something about techno that has always appealed. Glasgow has always been more of a techno city than anything else. In various other places that I've DJ'd, you play and you can ebb and flow and you change the pace and relax a little. Glasgow likes to start pretty fast and just get faster and faster and faster and faster.
Glasgow Sound, I would describe it as an edgier sound. I think that's instilled from the city, the nightlife, the people. You know, there is a house side of Glasgow which is more sort of lighter, but you know, there's still an edge to it. So Glasgow's a musical city, always has been. Various different forms of music, and the party scene has always been a Glaswegian trait. They go hand in hand. So the sub club was at the head of that back in the 80s, in places like Tin Pan Alley where Slam started off as well. And then the emerging scene from the States and obviously mainland Europe as well, and it's just garnered sort of pace since then.
The rise of the rave scene was often in rundown or secret venues, so often there would be unscripted farmhouses away from the main roads, down in old aeroplane hangars. You often heard about them by word of mouth, and often it was a friend of a friend who knew about it. I remember going to one just outside Dunblane, where it was actually an old farmyard, and you went in there, and what they'd done is they'd put a floor down, pegboard on a floor, and the bins and the loudspeakers were at one end and the DJ was there as well. And I remember actually being almost filthy with mud, having crawled through this field in order to get into a place that ended up being a rave. So that was one of my memories of being out there in the very illegal rave scene.
If you talk about music from earlier in like early 90s and stuff like Primal Scream and stuff like that, it's always kind of been swaying towards acid house sort of sound, which surely must have influenced Glasgow at this time. Then you've got Soma, they're bringing out Daft Punk in the mid-90s, so these things must be a huge influence on the scene, on the music in Glasgow from then on.
Detroit, Berlin and Glasgow have one unifying thing that they have in common. They're all cities that have gone through quite profound post-industrial change. If you look at Detroit, it suffered from the abandonment of the car factories, from their hardcore industry, as Glasgow did. With Berlin slightly differently, as it unified with East Berlin. Actually, if you look at an awful lot of the clubs now, they're often been taken over into old industrial buildings like warehouses, old factories, old rundown areas underneath railway stations. So they've had a lot of real estate or places that people could set up rough clubs. And I think that that's true of all three of those cities.
I think in the 80s and 90s in Glasgow, Berlin and Detroit, there was a lot of people that were all ready for something different and something new, and there was time for new music genres to really thrive in these cities. I think probably poverty and temperature as well, climate. People in Glasgow aren't very good at playing volleyball or surfing, but they're really good at rave.
Glasgow's willingness to put on a party under any circumstances. If you can only get a venue where there's going to be a ceilidh till 11:30, but you want to have a party, well, you'll have a party in a place that's got a ceilidh until 11:30, and you'll just make the most of it.
Music definitely plays a big part in people's lives in Glasgow. It's a real outlet for them. A bit of a curse in Glasgow is that there's almost too many things on one night. You're always up against someone no matter what, so there's a lot of competition to see who's going to have the sort of bigger or the cooler guest or the more underground one.
There's almost an excitement in Glasgow that the after party is going to be better than the actual night out.
After parties are just like the X-rated club. We're just there, but we're all wrecked already. We're still wanting to go, still want to end.
The police are fairly swift at being able to shut parties down quite quickly. They're quite good at it. But that's great. It's good. That's what keeps the underground sort of culture going, is just these spontaneous parties. Always great fun, but unfortunately it's frowned upon here by the authorities, and it doesn't do anything bad. People are just wanting to have fun, that's all it is really.
So I'm on the phone and someone's calling from Detroit or from France and they say, Glasgow, what's it really like? I'd say it's a really happening city. It's a city that's got so many things going for it. This is a city that's gone through the mill. It's had shipyards, it's had factories. A lot of them have closed down, and you would think that it would be a city on its knees, but it's one of the most self-confident places that you could imagine. And when you arrive and you bring your records and you set up your decks, there will be a crowd there, and there'll be one of the most passionate crowds that you'll ever perform in front of. Do not miss this city, it's the best.